the presentation mastery path this summer, I had already been in Toastmasters for 10 years. I've given dozens of speeches. So obviously at this point there's nothing left for me to learn, right? Wrong. Today I'm going to share with you what I've learned from working on the 5 levels of the presentation mastery path. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and guests.
Good morning.
Morning.
We'll start off at the very beginning, level 1. My first assignment was to give my 4th icebreaker speech. What I learned in this speech was that I definitely need to work on eye contact, making better use of my stage, and pacing myself. And these were the 3 things that I would be working on for the rest of my path. The next project is the evaluation and feedback project, where you have to give 2 speeches back-to-back evaluated by the same evaluator. What I got out of this project is the importance of listening closely to what your evaluator tells you, because she's going to be expecting you to implement those suggestions in your very next speech. Then the final part of this module is learning how to evaluate someone. Now, in my 10 years as a Toastmaster, I've been evaluating people for years and years. But I still had something to learn. And the online resources for this path, Toastmasters gives you excellent information, such as the difference between advice and feedback, and why feedback is preferable. And they give excellent videos on how not to and how to give an evaluation. So I highly recommend the videos. The final project in level 1 was to give a research project. And with this research project, again, the online material gives you great information, such as why, despite what Sumit shared with us this morning, Wikipedia is not your best source. Now we're ready to move on to level 2. Level 2 starts off by giving you a quick survey to find out what your communication style is. No big surprise, I learned that I'm the analytical type. Toastmasters then goes on to tell you how you need to change your style, modify your style to meet the needs of the audience. So that's why I started using stories. The next speech was one of my favorite speeches, is the gesturing speech. And I was all over that because I love to do over-the-top gestures and really go to town with these gestures. So I had a gesture for everything, and everyone was really involved in that project. Then the final project on level 2 was mentoring. They give you all kinds of interesting information on mentoring, such as what's the difference between coaching and mentoring. And the project there requires you to give a speech on when you were a mentee, or as they put it, protege. So as I was working on level 2, keep in mind that I had identified as one of my weaknesses mastering the stage. So I was constantly trying to master my stage. And all 3 of my evaluators called me out on this. They said I had busy feet, that I was guilty of nervously pacing, and that I was just all over the place. And all I was trying to do is make use of my stage. I can't win, but now at least I know what I need to work on moving on to level 3. So here we are at level 3. Start off, the very first speech on level 3 is the persuasive speech. And I'm not a salesman. I'm more like a shy, retiring type. So this is way out of my comfort zone. So I'm always learning something new, definitely, on a speech like this. And the online material gives you good information. Now keep in mind that this was just 2 speeches removed from the gesture speech. So for this speech, I had a gesture for every single point I made in this persuasive exercise. And Kermit was my evaluator that day, and he called me out on it. He's on giving too many gestures. He said less is more. And I thought about that. And so in subsequent speeches, I worked on giving less gestures. And what I found was the less gestures I used, the more poignant and more meaningful the remaining gestures became. So when you're moving on in level 3, they give you a series of electives from which to choose. You have to choose 2 electives. And the first one that I chose was using presentation software. Now this is a classic example of how Toastmasters is relevant in your work life, because coincidentally, that same week at work, I was asked to put together a PowerPoint presentation. So the lines for me between Toastmasters and work became blurred that week. Also, while I was working on that project, they had an online video for that project in the material that I thought was hysterical. They show this guy giving a PowerPoint presentation and just reading from the slides, mumbling while he's reading from the slides, and they show the audience and everyone's exasperated. And I tell you, these videos are worth the price of admission, because I thought that was hysterical. My evaluator for that speech was Sophia, and keep in mind, I'm still trying to work on eye contact. And Sophia gave me a very useful suggestion. She said that to master eye contact, you focus on one person for one point. Then when you make your next point, you move on to the next person. Still trying to implement that. Not perfect, but I'm working on it. Then the final speech for level 3 was vocal variety. And as you know, that's my forte. You know, I do the voices, and I do the highs and lows and the tones. But Roz was my evaluator in that speech, and she said there was definitely room for improvement. I need to punch out my points, so I can always learn something. So with that in mind, it's time to move on to level 4. Level 4 was when you need to deal with a difficult audience. Oh, that's you guys. Now, all joking aside, the reason I say that is when Pathways first came out, you all asked me to give an impromptu speech on Pathways. And I just went along, and you guys just interrupted me and heckled me. It was awful. I didn't know how to deal with myself. But again, the online material to the rescue. In the online material, they give you good information on how to handle these interruptions with poise and dignity. And the online material gives you a nice video of this innocent young lady giving a speech and this other woman getting up and saying, "I disagree, you're all wrong," and how she has to deal with that nicely. And I think I did really well, because Sharon was my evaluator that day, and she said it was like she was being psychoanalyzed. I suppose that's a good thing. The second project in level 4 is where you have to select through a series of objectives through social media. You have to think of one way you can use social media. And I figured, as the Vice President of Public Relations, it was incumbent on me to give a speech on all the different social media outlets that we use in our club. And I really explained every single detail of that, and I got good feedback. The members of the club said that they didn't realize all the different things that we use, such as Twitter and Instagram, and Facebook, and Meetup, and they thought that was really worthwhile. So, now with social media behind us, it's time to move on to level number 5. Level 5's required project is to give an 18 to 22-minute keynote speech. I hadn't given a 22-minute speech since my bar mitzvah, which was, I don't even want to care to say how long that ago was. And one of the things that I had to learn was engaging the audience. Ellery was my evaluator, and he said that I came across as being self-congratulatory and just not engaging. People were falling asleep. So that's something that, I'll just say that it was a learning experience. And then the last project in number 5 was to select from an elective regarding leadership. And I chose to lead a panel discussion. And what I learned from there was to shift the focus from my needs to the needs of the panelists to make sure they were comfortable and had everything they needed. So at this point, the question becomes, where do I go from here? I'd like to continue shifting the focus from myself to the needs of the members, and I feel that my new role as Vice President of Education would be the perfect vehicle for me to do that. So, in conclusion, I just want to thank everyone for their benevolence in supporting me as I work through this path, helping me to become a better speaker and leader, and I look forward to working with everyone as we proceed along the Toastmasters journey together. Madam Toastmaster.